Okay, in Canada, Google attempted to collude with the Ontario government to make the new port development in Toronto into a smart city. And a person I know well who knows more about technological issues and issues of potential technological control, probably than anybody I've ever talked to in the world, more or less fought that to a standstill so that Google didn't get their hands on the port development in Canada. And his primary concern was that what Google essentially wanted was all the data that would be generated as a consequence of constant monitoring of absolutely everything that went on in the smart city, because that data is part of the extended digital self and has tremendous commercial value. Because if I can track you in all your purchases and where you're going and where you are, I can target you for marketing in a way that's been unheard of up until now. And so that's a huge can of worms, and in any case, that didn't happen in Canada. But now it's reminiscent to me as well of what's happening in the UK, most particularly in Oxford and Cambridge, in relationship to the 15-minute cities. Now, the 15-minute cities are put forward as a solution to the problem of undue distance to travel. And so the idea is that, wouldn't it be lovely if we had walkable neighborhoods where everything you needed was within easy reach? And, you know, I have some sympathy for that because I've gone to monoculture suburbs, let's say, that are nothing but row upon row upon row of identical houses with no churches and no bars and no community centers, and, you know, the shopping centers at a distance, and that doesn't look like an optimal urban model. But I looked into the C40 websites. The C40 is the consortium of municipalities that have signed on to the 15-minute city plan. And I read in their own documentation, this is relevant to the tri-state city idea, that their goals are to reduce caloric consumption to 2,500 calories a day by force, essentially, within the next 15 years, to ensure that the peasant class, which is everybody but the elitists, can't fly more than one time every 3 years, to not merely shift private car ownership from fossil fuel to electric, which is fundamentally impossible because the grid can't handle it, but to eliminate 90% of private car ownership so that people are forced to take, you know, unbelievably expensive in terms of time utilization and non-existent public transportation systems, and to limit the amount of travel that people can do outside of their neighborhoods. And, you know, and then I watched the legacy media claim that pointing that out is something akin to a right-wing conspiracy, which it most certainly isn't, because you can just find the bloody documentation online. And then I look at places like China, which have taken this to an extreme. 600 million closed-circuit TV cameras in China, one for every 1.5 persons, watching the Chinese all the time, able to monitor them 100% by face, and also to identify them by gait, and to limit their ability to do absolutely anything, to buy, to sell, to travel, to move, to leave their neighborhood, with this top-down surveillance system that perversely and consciously some of the Chinese engineers have actually named Skynet, and in a conscious attempt to produce a positive version of, you know, the absolutely catastrophic, apocalyptic artificial intelligence that was in the bloody Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And you can't even talk about this stuff without sounding like a raving conspiratorialist, but there it is. Now, tell me more about the tri-state city. So what have you seen? Because I don't know anything about it, neither does anybody else watching, I presume, except for, you know, those who've gone down the rabbit hole with you.
We'll be right back. First, we wanted to give you a sneak peek at Jordan's new documentary, Logos and Literacy.
I was very much struck by how the translation of the biblical writings jump-started the development of literacy across the entire world.
Illiteracy was the norm. The pastor's home was the first school, and every morning it would begin with singing.
The Christian faith is a singing religion. Probably 80% of scripture memorization today exists only because of what is sung.
This is amazing. Here we have a Gutenberg Bible printed on the press of Johann Gutenberg.
Science and religion are opposing forces in the world, but historically that has not been the case.
Now the book is available to everyone.
From Shakespeare to modern education and medicine and science to civilization itself,
It is the most influential book in all of history, and hopefully people can walk away with at least a sense of that.
I love to read voraciously on pandemic because I'm a war correspondent, and pandemic, famine, and war, they go together, right? They are co-sanguinated. And I was reading a book about cholera a couple of years ago. I think it was called Ghost Map. And interestingly, towards the end of the book, the author, in an otherwise excellent book, started talking about these smart cities where, basically everything, we don't have to worry about any disease anymore, that sort of thing. Last time I was in China, I got kicked out of Hong Kong in 2020. I was a bad boy. I was watching the protest, and they finally kicked me out after 7 months. But that was Hong Kong. But the last time I was in mainland China, I was actually researching information more. I was in places like Nanjing and Shanghai and that sort of thing.